Good evening and welcome to BATV News. I'm Andrew Laidley. National Security Minister Robert Montague says in addition to the state of emergency in St. James, the security forces are conducting other operations in crime hotspots across the country. Minister Montague gave an update on the state of emergency in Parliament today. More in this report. National Security Minister Robert Montague says while it's still early days in the state of emergency in St. James, the security forces are already making inroads.
The security operations, which are in their very early stages, are going very well. So far, the state of emergency has resulted in the detention of 196 persons, the seizure of 4 firearms, and approximately 300 rounds of illegal ammunition. Among the 197 persons detained, 10 men wanted for serious crimes, including murder and shootings. The security forces have also advised that 83 of the 197 persons detained are strongly believed to be connected to gangs in St. James.
He says security operations have also been launched in neighboring parishes to catch criminals who may have escaped the security forces on the ground in St. James.
We are aware that criminal elements will attempt to flee St. James to neighboring parishes. As such, a number of operations are being conducted across the island in support of the state of emergency. These operations are in an effort to apprehend wanted men who may have eluded the main area of operations.
But the security operations go way beyond the neighboring parishes. Minister Montague notes that operations are also underway in St. Catherine and St. Andrew.
Portmore St. Catherine has been identified as a likely area where displaced criminals may be housed. As such, a joint team from CTOC and the Fugitive Apprehension Team, Mobile Reserve, have conducted targeted raids on several premises. The Mobile Reserve and St. Catherine Central Police have picked up 2 persons of interest in Augusttown this very morning relative to a shooting in the community last night.
For BATV News, I'm Andrew Laidley. Meanwhile, Tourism Minister Ed Bartlett is admitting that the ministry and its agencies have been forced to reshape their marketing approach because of the state of emergency in St. James. Camille Gale has more.
With the negative publicity in the international press about the St. James state of emergency growing each day, Tourism Minister Ed Bartlett says the ministry has found itself in damage control mode.
We're using technology to great effect. The social media in particular, to carry out images, show images, positive images about the fact that the tourism is still active and strong, that visitors are on the beach, they are at the hotels, they are going through to their attractions in the normal way, they are arriving at the airports, and everything is going seamlessly.
The minister argues that the local media has a role to play in how the state of emergency is being portrayed to the world.
Perhaps even more important is the impact of our media partners in Jamaica in relation to the transmittal of positive images in the marketplace. Because the biggest validation of the safety, security, and seamlessness of which we speak doesn't come from the minister. It comes from the crucibles through which these important values are transmitted. And I think that we all have a responsibility to our country to ensure that a positive step towards dealing with cauterizing crime must not be used as a negative instrument to detract from the growth that we're having.
So is the minister suggesting that the local media sugarcoat stories about the St. James state of emergency?
Are you saying that the media then needs to have tourism in the back of its mind when it's reporting about the state of emergency?
No, it just needs to have Jamaica at the back of its mind.
Meanwhile, Minister Bartlett admits that there are some concerns in the tourism industry about the future fallout from the state of emergency.
And, this morning I met with the team and the industry. We had a long breakfast meeting. We're examining the reports as they come from the marketplace. We're not in a position to tell you anything in terms of that as yet, but we're always proactive.
For BATV News, I'm Camille Gale.
And the tourism minister officially launched the Blue Mountain Festival this morning. The festival is expected to bring more tourists to the area while benefiting coffee farmers. More in this report.
Come March, the tourism ministry is expecting thousands of tourists to descend on Jamaica for the Blue Mountain Coffee Festival.
This signature festival will be a 3-day celebration of all things coffee, with lots of sampling, food demonstrations, workshops, exhibitors' booths, live entertainment, a barista competition, and the opportunity to purchase high-quality coffee and other products. It is definitely a must to be there event for coffee lovers and aficionados.
Local farmers are expected to benefit extensively from the festival.
The upcoming festival will help to bring even more of the wealth of tourism to these communities. Coffee has the potential to create an industry that goes beyond the export value which we are now embracing, and that it is possible for us to have a coffee economy.
Meanwhile, President of the Coffee Exporters Association, Norman Grant, says the coffee festival is coming at an opportune time as the industry tries to improve efficiencies.
Our challenges, therefore, includes increasing our productivity from 25 boxes per acre to 90 to 100 boxes per acre, while simultaneously aggressively diversifying our markets for green beans, as well as expand our value-added products both locally and to our tourist, hotel, supermarket chains and export. We believe that this coffee festival, the Blue Mountain Coffee Festival, is therefore very timely.
Still to come, stop being obsessed with the value of the dollar. We'll tell you who said that and why after the break. Welcome back. IMF resident representative for Jamaica, Dr. Constant Lonkengwana, thinks local economists are too obsessed with how much the Jamaican dollar values compared to the US. He says movements in the exchange rate aren't accurate indicators of economic growth. Dr. Lonkengwana was addressing the PSOJ President's Forum this morning. Here's more. Dr. Constant Lonkengwana says movements in the Jamaican dollar has no impact on the daily lives of citizens. As a result, he says the emphasis around monitoring foreign exchange on a daily basis is pointless. He argues that the energy spent obsessing over foreign exchange rates needs to be redirected to monitoring the inflation rate, which he says has a more direct impact on consumers.
Successful countries have anchored their monetary policy around inflation, because inflation is what is the average price. Exchange rate is not the average price. Exchange rate is the price for the person who import everything. Well, fine, but that's his price. But the price that the average American pay is the inflation.
The IMF representative also argues that too much emphasis is placed on the performance of the Jamaican dollar against the US dollar. He says other currencies should be monitored as well.
The US is not the only trade partner of Jamaica. I mean, you can be appreciating against the US and depreciating against the euro. I mean, you have visitors coming from all over. So that's number one. It's not a single basket. You have to look at all the trade partners. How is the Jamaican dollar moving against the euro? How is it moving against the Canadian dollar? It cannot be a focus on the US dollar alone.
He says local economists aren't paying attention to what really matters, which can result in unreal growth figures.
What matters is not the nominal, it's not the nominal value of the exchange rate, but it's your real exchange rate, your real effective exchange rate. How on balance, taking into account your price, what's the competitiveness of your economy? That's what matters for a small open economy.
For BATV News, I'm Andrew Laidley. The industry ministry is clamping down on the exportation of brass and copper in light of increased theft. Industry Minister Carl Samuda made the announcement at a press briefing this morning. Javon Keys reports.
Industry and Commerce Minister Carl Samuda says because of the more stringent regulations on the exportation of scrap metal, thieves are now shifting their attention to other precious metals such as brass. Sugar mill bearings valued at $16.5 million were stolen from the Worthy Park Sugar Estate in St. Catherine between December 22, 2017 and January 11, 2018.
Although the cost is very impactful, that is not the end of the story, because really what it does is it jeopardizes the continued production of the sugar estate, because if, God forbid, one of the existing bearings were to go down, the estate would have to close.
In light of this, the minister points out that the exportation of brass and copper will now be placed under more stringent regulation.
It is intended that going forward, and in fact I think it has already been engaged, where we will be putting brass on specific license. So no more brass will be collected for this general export without first obtaining a license. And with that in place, along with copper, those two very valuable types of metals will be under specific control.
Minister Samuda says while there are many calls for the approximately $5 million industry to be shut down, that's not on the cards.
From where I stand, I suspect that that is more a forlorn hope than a likely reality in the short term, because it just needs proper management, and I am sure that right now everyone will agree, based on the experiences over the past few months, that it is well regulated and it is running quite well.
For BATV News, I'm Javon Keys.
State Minister in the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, Rudyard Spencer, says it's much harder to give everyone what they want when they're all asking at the same time. The State Minister was referring to ongoing wage negotiations where several public sector groups are demanding a wage increase. The State Minister was speaking at a public sector wage forum in Kingston yesterday. The forum was hosted by the Hugh Lawson Shearer Trade Union Education Institute. Nordia Francis Williams tells us more.
State Minister Rudyard Spencer says it's impossible to grant public sector workers the wage increases they're asking for if they're all asking at the same time.
We have a situation where all public sector workers come up for review at the same time. That by itself makes it impossible to grant the wages that normally they would or could get.
He argues that there are many allowances in place to make up for shortfalls in basic salary.
We have 175, is that it, Mr. Roberts? Allowances. Nowhere else you have that. Nowhere else you'll ever hear about anything like that. And I can tell you, because I also add a couple of them to the list, that you do that to try to make up for the wages.
He says the government may be forced to cut certain allowances to be able to bring salaries up to an acceptable level.
My suggestion, Mr. Roberts, is to look at all the public sector workers, police, teachers, nurses, Confederation of Trade Union Workers, all these people, and select one. Because when you are finished with that one, you won't have the amount of allowances now obtained, but you will have carried the salaries to a level that is acceptable in today's Jamaica.
For BATV News, I'm Nordia Francis Williams.
Now stay with us. Regional and international stories are next. Welcome back. It's time for regional and international news. The opposition in the Bahamas is criticizing the government for what it's calling the purging of the public sector. More in this report.
If you continually, as a government, fire, not hire, but just keep letting people go unceremoniously, thousands in the thousands, then how does that stimulate the economy?
The Minnis administration has been accused by opposition members of purging the public service by sending home staff at several government entities during its short term in office. In November, 30 contract workers in the Department of Inland Revenue were terminated, while the gaming board disengaged 30 people.
No, they have not. I have difficulty in coming to a conclusion that this government understands the fundamentals of our economy and what are the fundamentals that show up the economy.
Davis says the only silver lining under this current administration was the expanded opening of Bahamar. He said the opening of the Grand Hyatt last April and SLS at Bahamar in November, as well as the opening of a number of restaurants and other facilities at Bahamar, can be credited for supplementing much-needed jobs in the Bahamian economy.
And don't forget, SLS is a part of the Bahamar project. That was a fake coming, as it were. It came. And it came. And thank God for that. That it was able to be open to alleviate some of the burdens of our people. But what else is there? What else have they done?
The unemployment survey conducted last October is expected to be released within weeks. The most recent survey, conducted last April, showed unemployment dropped from 11.6% to 9.9% nationally. The decline was linked to hiring in the public service, the construction and hotel industries, and Bahamas Junkanoo Carnival. Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Negotiators from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico are in Montreal for the latest round of talks on the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. U.S. President Donald Trump has been a frequent critic of NAFTA, saying he's prepared to withdraw U.S. membership if the negotiations do not produce more favorable terms. Al Jazeera's Daniel Lack has more.
During the 2016 election, Donald Trump often said NAFTA cost the U.S. jobs and lost trade. As president, he's given mixed signals, sometimes supporting a new agreement, then tweeting that NAFTA was a bad deal. Privately frustrated, Canadian and Mexican officials are putting on a brave public face.
There have been 5 previous rounds in which progress has been made. And for Mexico, it's very important to continue to make progress, both with the United States and with Canada.
For an example of NAFTA's impact, look to the auto industry. Since the deal was signed 25 years ago, car makers have moved much production to Mexico, where wages are lower. That makes the industry more globally competitive, say NAFTA supporters. But critics reply the costs have been too high.
Everybody, as it relates to the working class, has lost under NAFTA. Canadian workers lost their jobs. American workers lost their jobs. Mexican workers got the jobs, but they were never compensated.
This is sustainably fished
cod skin. At this gourmet pet food company north of Toronto, NAFTA has been good for business. U.S. customers are the largest market. If these NAFTA talks don't succeed, the firm's founder says he'll look elsewhere to make up for lost business, a situation familiar to thousands of companies in Canada and Mexico.
Now with that potential of NAFTA being destroyed, ripped up, do I continue to build in the U.S. or do I refocus my efforts into the EU and Asia?
Earlier this month, Canada angered the U.S. by filing a big trade complaint against it with the World Trade Organization. That's said to be increasing tensions in the NAFTA talks. So is the Trump administration's stance on a border wall with Mexico. But Canadian and Mexican negotiators say they'll continue to work for a deal even as the U.S. president talks about tearing it up.
There's been absolutely no guarantee for Canada and Mexico that the other side really wants to complete a deal. So Canada and Mexico know that if they walk away from the deal, from the table, nobody's going to call them back.
Unless the U.S. pulls out in the coming days, there will be more talks later this year, now that President Trump has relented on his demand that March be the deadline for a new deal or no deal. Daniel Lack, Al Jazeera, Toronto.
Meanwhile, politicians and business leaders from across the globe are in the Swiss Alps for the annual World Economic Forum. At the center of this year's summit is the debate over the growing gap between rich and poor. Al Jazeera's Jonah Hull reports from Davos.
The rising economies of Asia, new leadership in Africa, nationalism versus internationalist values, Donald J. Trump versus much of the world. This year's World Economic Forum annual meeting in the Swiss ski resort of Davos offers as wide a perspective on the global economy as any in recent years. Some things don't change: the falling snow, the delegates shuffling through it, CEOs, NGOs, influencers and disruptors, including 70 heads of state and government. The security bristles. Snipers, soldiers and checkpoints at a time of heightened threat. Special attention this year is reserved for Donald Trump, whose closing address on Friday is the meeting's most anticipated moment. Protests have already taken place nearby. Trump is the first US president to visit Davos in 18 years, and one who stands apparently opposed to the Davos ethos of globalism, with his America First policy of economic nationalism.
I think we should be surprised, and Davos is always a place where we look for surprises, and I hope it will be a positive surprise.
So you're expecting him to be rather more conciliatory rather than his feisty self?
I think the fact that he is coming to Davos is already a message in itself.
Trump's inauguration, that so dominated as the snow fell on Davos last year, feels like a long time ago. Now, an upswing in the global economy has lifted the mood of many, but they'll be asking themselves here, is it sustainable? NGOs will again warn that global growth can only go up if inequality comes down. The world's 8 richest people, they say, hold the same amount of wealth as the poorest 4 billion. This year's meeting will urge CEOs to improve their company's contribution to society. That's the sort of focus Davos isn't best known for. Jonah Hull, Al Jazeera, Davos.
Stay with us. Talking Stocks is after the break. Welcome back. Time now for Talking Stocks. 49 stocks traded today, of which 21 advanced, 19 declined, and 9 traded firm. The main JC index advanced by 6,110 points, closed at 286,675. The junior index advanced by 21 points, closed at 2,747. Over 5 million units traded, valued at more than $84 million on the Jamaican dollar market. And on the US dollar market, over 91,000 units traded, valued at over $20,000 US. JMMB Group, with over 1 million units changing hands, accounted for 20% of the market volume. Lascar Distributors was second with over 1 million units trading. Cable and Wireless Jamaica accounted for more than 500,000 units, amounting to 9% of the market volume, crossing the floor. CAC 2000 was the top advancer, up $1.10 to close at $8.40, followed by Paramount Trading, up 45 cents to close at $3.48, and General Accident Insurance, up 28 cents to close at $2.95. The main decliners were Main Event Entertainment Group, down $1 to close at $5.05, followed by Consolidated Bakeries, losing 16 cents to close at $2.44. And Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, down 50 cents to close at $11. And that's all the news we have for this evening. But before we go, a recap of our top story. National Security Minister Robert Montague says while it's still early days in the state of emergency in St. James, the security forces are already making inroads. Thanks for watching. For more content, please visit our website at batvja.com. I'm Andrew Laidley. Pleasant viewing.